evening, President Sanders, Dr. Ledbetter, and members of the board, bringing you tonight the COVID update on our dual platform of learning, which includes face-to-face and virtual learning. We want to share with you a little bit about the why behind our current dual platform of learning. As you remember, the summer of 2020, the Texas Education Agency approved that virtual learning was an option for public school districts to offer students, but face-to-face learning was required. The virtual learning option was approved by our Board of Trustees on July 27th and therefore communicated out to parents. Professional development for staff was also implemented and rolled out when staff reported back in August. Just recently, on October 15th, TEA Commissioner Mike Morath updated guidance to school districts due to a trend of districts contemplating to discontinue the remote learning option. Just to dig a little deeper into that revised guidance, school systems are not required to offer remote instruction to the general student population. Providing remote instruction to the general student population is a local decision and that one that can be modified by the local education agency during the school year. If we do so, we must give parents a 14-day notice. An LEA, which is a local education agency, may target remote instruction to only certain students under the following circumstances. For students who are sick or quarantining due to the COVID protocol, on a case-by-case basis for certain special education students in their IEP, and students with certain Section 504 accommodations, or only for students with health reasons that could be for themselves or for someone in the immediate home. Certain non-core courses in secondary may only be offered in an on-campus setting, limiting student access to some remote instruction courses. And then finally, discontinuing or allowing remote instruction in a way that's related directly to grades is not permitted. However, health-related qualifications are permitted for virtual learning. By the numbers, if you recall, when school began, parents had the choice of a virtual and face-to-face, and we opened our schools in August with 60% of our students choosing face-to-face, 40% choosing virtual. We did begin the school year in a 2.5 to 3 week virtual option, and then we transitioned the week of Labor Day into that face-to-face model. And currently at mid-October, at our October 22nd data poll, we are at 80% face-to-face, 20% virtual. You'll see there on the screen, elementary is 84-16 and secondary is 76-24. You will also recall on July 20th, the Board of Trustees voted to allow virtual learners to participate in extracurricular activities on campus, including courses that required face-to-face attendance. We did a data poll last week as well. We have 1,325 virtual learners designated as virtual learners. 919 of those report to school for an extracurricular in grades 6 through 12. 128 of those students report for a required face-to-face course. Of that group of virtual learners, 79% of them come to campus for a course daily or multiple times per week. That leaves us only 5% of our total secondary students truly full-time virtual, and 95% of our secondary students report to campus for one or more courses and activities every day. The current facts, one thing that we've been looking at and looking at districts around us is that we know that our teachers have continued to aim at optimizing the quality of instruction. They have held steadfast to keeping learning outcomes tight and the learning methods agile and responsive to our context. Many of our teachers are teaching both face-to-face and virtual learners simultaneously. We have been working on collecting data both quantitatively and qualitatively. We have continued to have lunch and learns with campuses, listening to teachers on a group basis in Zoom meetings. We have been pulling that data and theming it qualitatively. Very concerns from Lunch and Learn and teacher ambassadors from an academic progress of their virtual students. They are extremely concerned that remediation and interventions, that their students are not getting the support that they need through those avenues. They believe that less face-to-face and direct interaction with the classroom teacher is and then there's also leaving us with a lack of real-time observations. They shared with us a theme of just the struggle of the virtual learners being able to self-regulate, and then also a lack of group cognition and social learning because it's less accessible. Social and emotional progress of our virtual learners is a great concern of our teachers as we've been talking to them. From a social interaction being less accessible, but also peer relationship building is also less accessible. And then from a teacher workload standpoint, teaching both the face-to-face and virtual learners at the same time, really looking at not being able to split off just a virtual only class, dealing with continuity of relationship building as students switch back and forth between platforms. The workload on teachers to plan for both when they're putting both instruction face-to-face in front of their in-person learners, but also having it in Canvas and Seesaw for their virtual learners. And then the planning time required to ensure both platforms are as rigorous as our expectations would have them. Additionally, qualitatively, we have held a thought exchange with our staff. We did this during the week of October 28th, and it lasted through October 30th. Actual thoughts entered 171 strengths to 294 challenges. We had the ratings of others' thoughts, 2,120 to 4,000. So you'll see there we had a double in the challenging area. The emerging themes were very similar to the Lunch and Learn qualitative data. The strengths that the staff felt that was important for our virtual learning is that it was an option for health compromised students. In addition, that it allowed students and staff out on COVID protocol to still engage in the classroom instruction. The challenges to virtual learning through our staff thought exchange is the student progress, both academically and socially emotionally, as you heard on the previous slide, that it's aligned to that. Student accountability, attending in Zoom and actually turning in work and being accountable for that work. Parent support and really having the parents work along beside them, and then teaching both that face-to-face and virtual at the same time. So we believe that as we've been looking through, talking and collaborating with other districts across the state, being in some webinars across the nation, everyone's having a different pandemic. These are students who can thrive. There are students that can thrive at learning at home, but equally so, there are students who are declining while learning at home. And students and families are learning about new technology tools and practices. We know that many of our students are faced with challenges of independent learning posed by this crisis and learning how to make choices, meet deadlines, and manage on their own time. But those experiential learning gains are undoubtedly occurring alongside much less progress in the core academic curriculum that students typically experience. And we believe, listening to our teachers and then reading the research that we have found, this particular piece from the American Association of Advancement of Science definitely aligns with the experiences we're having in Midlothian ISD. Quantitatively, we have pulled our virtual and face-to-face average failure rates for the first grading period of elementary and the first grading period and a half, essentially for the secondary. First two grading period and a half and two grading periods for secondary. And you'll see here that the average virtual failure rate is higher amongst our virtual learners than it is our face-to-face learners, except for one grade level, which is third grade. From a secondary standpoint, you will see the same trend. The average failure rate, failing one or more class for our virtual learners, is higher, some significantly, some just a little bit. And then of course we have LEAP in here as well, while we have 67% of our virtual LEAP students not making progress. So you might ask, what are our campuses doing to help these problems that we're experiencing with virtual learners in the academic and social and emotional areas? Well, our principals and our teachers have been doing a lot of groundwork with our parents and our students. They've been revising and communicating virtual learning expectations for students and parents. We have increased required time in Zoom for synchronous learning. We've moved to every period is expected at secondary for students to log into Zoom. Parents, students, teachers, and administrators they've been having conferences for those that are struggling, offering students to transition back in a manner feasible to all parties. And they've also been discussing possible negative effects of staying on the virtual path, whether it be an attendance, 90% attendance rule, truancy issues, and then just the risk of failure of the course and or year, which could lead to retention and loss of credit. And then the principals have been working with teachers and guiding students back to face-to-face. We are seeing more students return to face-to-face than are going virtual by choice. So that trend is definitely in the right direction. Additionally, on our face-to-face campuses, what are campuses doing to help mitigate illness efforts on the face-to-face on the campuses? Well, they've been working through those health and safety protocols that the board adopted on July 27th. Masks are required, additional plexiglass in classrooms, the social distancing and plexiglass for lunch and other common times, enhanced cleaning and disinfecting. We also have some recent data. 4 of our 13 campuses did not have a test confirmed positive COVID case in October. 6 of our 13 campuses did not have a test confirmed positive case reported after the first week of October. We continue to work in partnership with the Texas Education Agency, the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and the Ellis County Health Authority for all COVID-related guidance. And honestly, our health and safety is a priority, and it's critical to keeping our schools open. And we feel very confident our principals and our teachers are doing an incredible job, and our students as well, of trying to mitigate efforts so that our students can be on campus learning in the most appropriate learning environment. So where do we go from here? In recent news and press releases, we've seen several districts, as well as our community has seen, moving away from virtual learning. We've had a lot of questions about that, whether it be from staff, whether it be from parents, but it is a lot of districts in the news are having this conversation. So we've done some research. We've sent a survey out. We've had some results. We've also been pulling news articles from across the state looking at what districts are doing. In front of you, you will see here a select sample set of districts that turned in their actual survey. Districts with various sizes, districts in various parts of the state, from the Panhandle to the Hill Country up into Collin County in this area alone. You will see in front of you districts that have already moved to a modified dual platform. And all of those that have moved to that modified dual platform have allowed virtual learning to stay open for those under COVID protocol, those with a documented health reason for themselves or someone in the home, immediate home, that may be living with them, and so they're concerned. And then in addition, those that need, whether it's written into an IEP for special education or 504 accommodation. You will also see on the far right column, several of the school districts do not allow their virtual learners to participate in extracurricular or face-to-face required courses, that it's all or none. You're either all virtual or you are all face-to-face. You'll see here also 3 additional districts that are contemplating the move, considering a change to that same modified version of virtual learning where students would qualify for that. And then you'll see 2 districts that are not considering that. Just a little bit of information behind those 2 districts. They are at a higher virtual student ratio than most of the other districts, anywhere from a 50-50 to a 60-40. So right now we have the current practice, our dual platform of learning, where everyone has a full choice of face-to-face or virtual learning. Students can switch learning platforms based on family choice, and the students can be virtual and participate in the extracurricular and required face-to-face. That is our current practice. Those are the strengths to that. The challenges to that come from a variety of data resources. Virtual learners, those switching back and forth, are struggling with academic progress, social and emotional progress, strain on our teachers to maintain high expectations, rigor, and maximize instructional time, and then that lack of group cognition and social learning. We also have a challenge of increased failure rates for virtual learners, as you saw on previous slides. We're missing real-time, authentic, teachable moments if they're not in Zoom, logged in, or in person in the classroom. As teachers are missing opportunities on real-time teacher observations. The exposure level increases simply because contact levels are likely for our virtual students that are attending school for specific courses and activities. We have found virtual learners that are coming down positive with the virus and are participating on campus for an extracurricular. And then we also are coming across some courses that we're going to have to move to the face-to-face required, just based on the work in general and the way it's designed and what the teachers need from those students. And we're going to have to look at adding engineering, cybersecurity, and video game design to the required course list. This is our current dual platform of learning. So we have 3 options we would like for the board to consider that we've done some research on and looked at our strengths and our challenges. The first option is to continue with our current dual platform of learning, which students have the choice, families have the choice of virtual or face-to-face, but we would require those that are choosing virtual to be 100% virtual. Therefore, if a student is choosing virtual, they would no longer be allowed to participate in extracurricular and face-to-face courses since we have so many of those already coming back on campus. The strengths in that really provides a lot of help to our secondary students and our secondary teachers. It increases that instructional impact and engagement, maximizes that face-to-face time. Our secondary would see increased academic progress for learners with real-time authentic observations. It would increase that SEL component that we've talked about on previous slides. There would be a smaller number on that virtual platform during a specific class period for a teacher. And then the consistency, if students choose, if they're in one face-to-face course, then they're in all face-to-face courses. If they're in one virtual, they're in all virtual. And then it reduces that demand on the secondary teacher workload. The challenges to this option is it reduces to be a virtual learner and still participate in on-campus extracurricular. That would take away that option. Elementary teachers would continue to have both learning platforms at the same rate they currently do. Secondary teachers could see an increase in some numbers in their classrooms, face-to-face in their classrooms, and it could require local policy change to exclude virtual learners from extracurricular. Another option to consider is the modified dual platform of learning for face-to-face for all and virtual option for only qualifying students. This is the option that most districts have gone to, that we have researched. When you hear them eliminating remote learning, they're not necessarily eliminating it, they're going to modify it, and it's for qualification process. The strengths to that is it does increase instructional impact and engagement for learners pre-K-12. It increases academic progress and real-time authentic observations. Also, that social emotional piece. The virtual learning would be reserved for those under COVID protocol, Special Ed 504, if it was written into an IEP or an accommodation, or someone with a verified documented medical necessity, whether it be themselves or it could be someone in their immediate household. It would allow for smaller numbers on the virtual learning platform during a class period and reduce demand on teacher workload across the board for our teachers in the district. The challenges to this is it does reduce choice for families for a non-health related reason. Again, the health related reasons, it would still be there, but for a non-health related reason, it would not. The virtual learning would require some documentation from parents. Teachers would continue to have both learning platforms, but it would be on a much more limited basis. It could increase some of the face-to-face numbers in classrooms. But then again, that's why our protocols are in place for the masks and the plexiglass and the other cleaning pieces. And we could also potentially lose some student enrollment if families choose to find a virtual program elsewhere or to completely homeschool. The third and final option that we brought into to look at for your consideration would be a single platform of learning, which is face-to-face for all and no virtual option for anyone. While this does increase the maximum face-to-face time, academic progress, real-time authentic SEL progress, and one platform of learning, it does provide some challenges where there would be no choice for families. Students on a COVID protocol or with a documented medical need due to COVID would miss a lot of instruction for the duration of their absences. And it would still increase those numbers in the classroom, and we would potentially lose student enrollment for those families that would choose a virtual program elsewhere or homeschool. So really the purpose of this presentation is information only. It was to provide the board an update on the strengths and challenges that we are facing as a district, and listening to our teachers, really digging into what's going on from an academic and a social and emotional standpoint. Right now, if we were to have a discussion about making a recommendation in response to our teacher needs and the academic and social and emotional needs of our students, we would recommend option B under our current local situation, health situation. That's the modified dual platform of learning, where we would require face-to-face for all students, but we would have a virtual option for those that qualified for virtual. This could potentially need a local policy adjustment to exclude virtual students from extracurriculars. We will also continue to monitor the fluid situation of COVID-19. It is changing daily, and we understand that. If the local situation took a path of increased COVID cases, we would recommend option A, which would be keeping our current platform and eliminating the opportunity for our virtual learners to participate in extracurricular and the required face-to-face, meaning virtual learners needed to be 100% virtual. So that's the option we would take if we felt like our local situation was not in the best interest to do option B. This one again could potentially need a local policy to exclude virtual learners from extracurriculars. Just as a reminder, we are in constant communication with our Ellis County Health Authority on all of our COVID cases, and she has been a great resource in helping us work through our cases. So what would be the next steps? We would schedule a board workshop the week of November 30th if there is a desire to make a change from the current dual learning platform, if that is the will of the board. If a decision to change is made, then we would have a communication plan that would begin upon that board decision. And we would look at the effective transition date to be the second semester, which would be January, when our students return from their winter holiday break. Thank you very much for taking time to listen through this program and this presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the board meeting. Thank you.